name is Kishore Mahbubani. I'm the Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this public lecture. I'm delighted that we have, thanks to the distinguished speaker, Dr. Ha-Joon Chang, a full house today. Now, I normally make only 3 points. First, a word about the school. We are delighted whenever we get a full house, when we decide it's good to have a commercial about the school, and to tell you all that, the mission of our school is actually a very noble one, to try and improve governance in Asia. And that's why only 20% of our students come from Singapore, and 80% of them come from the rest of the world. And many of them, as you may know, also come on scholarships given by our school, and we are able to do this because we are very fortunate to have become the third best endowed school of public policy in the entire world. Now, I also mention all this because I know many of you, especially the Singaporeans, travel around the region. When you go overseas, we hope when you go overseas, do a bit of marketing for the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and tell them if you're looking for a good school, come to the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Now that's the end of the commercial. Now, a word about the topic. I must say it is really very timely to address the issue where economics is, because I'm not a professional economist myself, but I sense that the discipline is under challenge. And under challenge from many fronts. I think one of the best questions was asked by one of the most, important laypersons of the world. She's called the Queen of England. Remember after when the crisis happened in 2008, 2009, she said, "We have so many economists and they didn't see it coming." So what happened? And I think that's right from the layperson's point of view, what's happening to the discipline. But on another front, there's also a feeling that the discipline has become almost like part of the field of mathematics rather than the social science. And as you all know, there's actually a big debate going on within the field about what needs to be done to bring back economics to the real world. And this is why, and this brings me to my third point, there's actually no better speaker for us to have today to speak to us than Dr. Ha-Joon Chang. Now I'm going to give you his bio. I cannot give you his complete bio, it'll take 1 hour. We want to give more time for him to speak. He is a reader of economics in the University of Cambridge, and his forthcoming book is called Economics, the User's Guide. I think it will be released on 1st May. Dr. Chang graduated from Seoul National University with a BA before doing his PhD in the University of Cambridge in Industrial Economics, graduating in 1992. And he has been teaching at Cambridge since 1990. He has previously worked as a consultant for international organizations such as UNCTAD, UNDP, UNIDO, FAO, ILO, World Bank, ADB, and many governments. And this is very significant because it shows his contact with the challenges of the real world in the field of economics. But in the academic field, he's also the winner of the 2003 Merdell Prize of the European Association for Evolutionary Political Economy, named after the Nobel Prize winner Gunnar Myrdal for his book, Kicking Away the Ladder. And if you read my first book, Asian Stain, you'll find I quote the book, Kicking Away the Ladder. He's also the 2005 joint winner of the Tufts University's Leontief Prize for Advancing the Frontiers of Economic Thought, which recognizes outstanding contributions to economic theory that address contemporary realities and support just and sustainable societies. And in 2013, Dr. Chang was voted the third most influential economist in the world in Prospect Magazine's World Thinkers poll. Now, his many books have been translated into 35 languages and published in 38 countries, and have sold 1.3 million copies worldwide. Now, as an author, I can tell you that's an incredible figure. And it's remarkable what he has done in that field. And a leading philosopher of the day, John Gray, calls Dr. Chang's 2010 book, the book is entitled 23 Things That They Don't Tell You About Capitalism. He describes it as, quote, a witty, iconoclastic, and uncommonly commonsensical guide to the follies of economics. And I think today we're going to get a witty, iconoclastic, and uncommonly commonsensical lecture today. So with that, Ha-Joon, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kishore, for that very generous introduction. I don't know how I can live up to that, but I'll do my best. Well, today I'm going to talk about this new book of mine that is coming out, as he mentioned, on the 1st of May. And in the process, talk about the problems with today's economics and how the subject can be made different and better, well, at least in my view. Now, as you see from this cover, the book is going to be the first volume in the new reincarnation of the iconic Pelican Paperback series that was very popular between the 1930s and the 1980s. I mean, the people who of my age might remember some of them. You know, it covered many different areas. I mean, I looked through some of the old lists. I mean, there were literally hundreds of volumes, and you know, it covered a vast range of things from the universe to ants, to philosophy, to bird watching, and it was that kind of very typical way of getting introduced to a subject that you know nothing about but are interested in. And after 30 years of hiatus, its publisher, the Penguin Press, decided to revive the series, and my book has the honor of being the very first volume. Now, in this book, I basically try to dispel the widespread perception that economics is too complicated for non-economists. Actually, when you think about it, it's very interesting because people have very strong opinions about just about everything. Yeah? No, really, I mean, gay marriage, you know, Afghanistan, global warming. I bet that you have very strong opinions about all of this without having any necessary qualification to make a judgment. Yeah? But we all do, you know. I mean, I don't have really very little qualification to make any judgment about Afghanistan. You know, I don't have a degree in international relations or Middle Eastern politics or anything like that, but I have my view. Yeah? But when it comes to economic issues, people say, oh, you know, I don't know about it because it's too complicated, it's not for non-specialists. But when you think about it, why? Why should economics be different? It is only because economists have been fantastically successful in making people believe that economics is so difficult that they cannot understand it even if economists try to explain it to them. Yeah? But this is not true. Yeah? And you know, in my previous book, 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, I stuck my neck out and said that actually 95% of economics is common sense. Well, made to look difficult with the use of jargons and mathematics. Huh? So in this book, I try to kind of make economics accessible to anyone with more than secondary education. So I literally try to define, well, almost everything in the book and start from really scratch. Now, however, being accessible doesn't mean that I'm trying to give you some, as the reader, that some baby version of economics. Because I really take my readers seriously and try to talk about some fundamental issues, some of which I'm going to discuss today. You know, what is economics? Or whether economics can be a science, or we can separate economics from politics and so on. I mean, these are very big issues, which even some professional economists that may not have a the adequate background in discussing, but these are very important issues, and I talk about all of this once again in plain language because I take my readers very seriously. I'm not going to, well, I'm at least not trying to tell the reader, look, I know that what I'm talking about, trust me, I'm an economist, and this is how economics is and should be. No, I try to, the way I describe it is that I try to tell my reader how to think rather than what to think. Now, this is the table of contents. And as you can see from here, the book contains actually lots of things that you don't normally see in economics books these days. So, what is economics, economic history? Yes, let's go to the, So lots of neglected topics that dealt with what is economics, history of capitalism, different schools of economics. I'll talk about all of them later. Some topics that are crucial in understanding the economy but are not very much discussed by economists these days, production, work. Excuse me. I'll talk about all of this later. My book also introduces people to lots of what I call real-life numbers. We all have this impression that economics is a numbers subject. Yeah, and indeed a lot of numbers are floating around when you try to read economics articles or financial articles written by economists. But despite this, it is actually these days quite common that people graduate from an economics degree without having any idea of some fairly basic numbers. What is the national output of their own country? How big the world economy is? What proportion of that is produced by China, and so on. Now, of course, this is the internet age, and you can find these numbers like that if you want. So you don't need to actually remember any of these, but it is important to have some feel about these numbers, even just to know what to look for. So that that you need to have some feel about. I mean, when you say, China is a lot more important than it was, say 30 years ago. What kind of magnitude of change are you talking about? So what is the proportion of world output produced by China today? What was it 30 years ago, and so on? You need to know these things. However, we need to also learn, and I talk about it, that economic numbers are not as objective as numbers in physics or chemistry. In those subjects, very often you can measure things down to the 17th decimal point, so to speak. But in economics, numbers are based on many theories, and in that context, it could do worse than citing the German writer and philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who once said that everything factual is already a theory. Because economic numbers are not numbers in the sense of being able to count apples. It is manufactured. So that take the most commonly used economic number, GDP. GDP is actually based on lots of theories. One of which is that you do not count household work and care work done on non-monetary basis. Well, you may agree or disagree with that decision, but it is a decision. You have actually made a decision not to include these things. unemployment figures. I mean, that if you look at the unemployment figures, you have to realize that to be able to be counted as employed, all that is required that you have done more than 1 hour of paid work in the last week. But why 1 hour? Why not 3 hours? Why not 11 hours? It's a theory. And to be able to be counted as unemployed, you also should be willing to work, which is defined as having tried to find a paid job in the last 4 weeks. The vast number of workers who are technically known as discouraged workers. These are workers who actually want to work, but then they've given up looking for a job because jobs are too difficult to find. I mean, today there are a lot of these discouraged workers around the world because of this the financial crisis, but then they are in economics are not counted as unemployed because they haven't tried to find the work in the last 4 weeks. So that's another theory. Why is it 4 weeks? Why is it not 8 weeks or 2 weeks or 6 months? So you have to take the numbers in economics with a grain of salt. Sometimes a bag of salt. Okay, let's look at these things in a bit more detail. Well, first of all, let's discuss what is economics. If we ask people what is economics, those who are not actually familiar with the subject would say, well, obviously it's the study of the economy. Chemistry is study of chemical substances. Sociology is a study of society, so economics must be the study of the economy. Well, unfortunately, they'll be wrong, at least according to some of the most popular economics books of our time, because according to these books, economics is about the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the cult comedy science fiction series by Douglas Adams. Well, it's a bit of an old series, having been written in the 80s and early 90s, but some of you might have seen the movie version of it, which was made in 2005. The leading character was played by British actor Martin Freeman, who is these days very famous as the Hobbit and Watson in the Sherlock. In this book, there's this literally this thing called the ultimate question about life, the universe, and everything, and economics is supposed to be about that. Well, you may think I'm joking, but I'm not. Well, at least not entirely, because if you look at these books, economics is really supposed to be about life, the universe, or at least the world, and, well, at least almost everything, These are some of the most popular economics books of today, and you will see that it's supposed to be about everything, or almost everything, or about life, and, it's quite impressive, huh? Now, when you think about it, this is some claim coming from a subject that botched up its main job, namely explaining the economy. Even the British Queen recognizes this, and we know what happened. Huh? So, does economics have a serious case of megalomania? Huh? It couldn't do even its main job, and then it claims that it can actually explain everything. Huh? Well, of course, I'm being unfair. These books were written for the, popular market, and as a author operating in the popular market, I know how the pressure is there to make it more marketable, and you have to hype up your claims. Yeah? I mean, you cannot avoid that. Yeah? But the point is that the titles are not that the titles are hyped up, but the titles are piped up in a particular way. Because they could have said something like, how my book can explain everything about the economy. How my economists can explain everything about the economy. But they are saying that how my book can explain everything about the economy and also everything else. Yeah? This is a very particular type of claim which comes from the fact that the subject has been defined in a very particular way, which is this. The dominant school of economics today, that is the neoclassical school, has defined economics basically by its analytical methodology, that is so-called rational choice theory, rather than by its object of investigation, that is the economy. So the classic definition in this regard was given by the LSE economist Lionel Robbins in 1932, basically is a science of choice. The choice could be about anything. For example, some of you might have read the popular book Free Economics, where just about everything that is discussed there has really nothing to do with economics as people would normally understand it. Yeah, doesn't talk about employment, unemployment, output, productivity, efficiency. No, it's about the choices that people make, and these people, very few of them actually have anything to do with the economy, because they are Japanese sumo wrestlers and contestants in the British quiz show, the Weakest Link, and the Chicago drug dealers and so on. But these people believe that this is a legitimate. These are legitimate subjects for economists because they believe that anything that involves the rational choice is an object of investigation for an economist. But this is a really peculiar definition. Yeah, of course, I mean, many choices involve some dimension of rational choice, but saying that there is some rational dimension to even the choices made by very non-rational looking people like Japanese sumo wrestlers doesn't mean that that can explain all of their behavior. Many economists like to think that their subject is the physics of social sciences, but physicists never claim that what they do can actually explain animal behavior. Because there are many more layers of reality before you get from particle physics to animal behavior. But economists somehow think that, we have this rational choice theory which can explain everything. My contention is that economics should be defined not in terms of its methodology, but like all other subjects, in terms of its object of investigation, that is the economy, or how we produce goods and services, how we distribute the incomes generated in the process, and how we exchange and consume those things. Now, one important consequence of the neoclassical definition of economics that I just given you is to make these economists believe that there is only one right way of doing economics. That is rational choice theory. But I would tell you that there are at least 9 different major schools of economics, and easily more than a dozen if you include smaller schools and or split some of the schools into their sub-schools. And free market economics alone has 3 varieties. Classical economics of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, neoclassical economics, which actually isn't necessarily a free market economics. There are neoclassical economists who are in favor of free market and those who are not, like Joe Stiglitz. And there's the Austrian economics represented by Friedrich von Hayek, which is even more pro-free market than the classical or neoclassical economics, but on the basis of a very different economic theory. Actually, Hayek himself has written many articles criticizing neoclassical economics for being unrealistic and all that. Anyway, we cannot go into that, but this particular definition of economics has made the most economists kind of think that there's only one right way of doing economics. But my contention in the book is that we need all these diverse approaches to economics because they have all have their strengths and weaknesses. And to back up this point, I give you what I call the Singapore problem, or what I call life is stranger than fiction. No, because if you read the account of Singapore's economic development written by free market economists, you'll only hear about its free trade policy and its welcoming attitude towards foreign investors, which it has. But they'll never tell you that almost all the land in Singapore is owned by the government. They'll never tell you that 85% of housing is provided by the Housing Development Board. They'll never tell you that more than 20% of Singapore's GDP is produced by the government boards or the government-linked enterprises. When in other countries, the equivalent share will be less than 10%. So I often put it to my students, look, give me one economic theory, be it neoclassical, Marxist, Keynesian, doesn't matter. Give me one economic theory that can explain Singapore, and of course there is no such theory. Yeah, so you are a terrible problem to economists. Not that they really care about reality. Yeah, so basically all theories are partial. Especially in economics and other social sciences, they make political and ethical assumptions. They focus on certain aspects. So, for example, even if they are both oriented towards free market, classical economists put a lot more emphasis on production, and neoclassical economists put a lot more emphasis on exchange. So in the book, I argue that we need to let 100 flowers bloom as the Chairman Mao said. Well, of course, he had a hidden agenda. He wanted all the flowers bloom so that he can nip off the ones he didn't like. But genuinely let 100 flowers bloom. But more importantly, that you need to have them cross-fertilize. I mean, I cannot go into that here, but in the book I explain how apparently diametrically opposed schools like, say, Marxist school and the Austrian school actually have some common ground. And actually putting them together might actually generate some interesting ideas. Yeah, so my recommendation is that, this saying that a man with a hammer will see everything as a nail. So my advice is that you should not try to become a man or a woman with a hammer, but you should get a Swiss knife. Because there's many tools. Of course, you need the common sense to know what to choose. But at least you then have a possibility of applying different tools to different problems. If you only have a hammer, well, you might be lucky and what you have in front of you might be a nail, but if it's an egg, it will be a disaster, or a bottle of wine. And it is not just in terms of introducing different types of economic theory that my book is different from other economics books. I mentioned that I also talk about different topics. I cannot talk about both of them, but you know, two of the things I mentioned earlier was production and work. You know, I mean, the first point I'll make very briefly. You know, we are told that economics is about market and exchange, but then by accepting that, we are ignoring a huge portion of our economy, that is production. What happens in factories and shops and banks and so. Of course, in economics, the standard economic theory, there's this notion of production function, but it is a very mechanical relationship. You throw in some known quanta of abstract labor and capital, and somehow it happens. There's no discussion on how you organize factories, how you run inventory system, and how you raise productivity and so on. And economists think, these are all for other people. These are for engineers and managers, and it's not our problem. But this way we are basically ignoring the majority of the economy, because basically 70–80% of our economic activities are done within the organizations that perform production rather than through markets. Another important topic that is completely ignored in the economics today is that of work. In the standard economic theory, work is treated basically as a necessary evil. Because we are defined essentially as consumers, and we are seen as becoming happy only when we consume something. And work is how you get the income with which you buy things to consume, but work itself is not important. Yeah, it's treated as disutility. It's something that you want to avoid, but then you have to do it to get money. Of course, there is that aspect, but when you think about it, work affects us in very fundamental ways. I mean, it affects our physical and psychological well-being. More importantly, it affects our sense of fulfillment and our identity and so on. When your work is interesting, your life is more fulfilled. When your work is repetitive and boring, it destroys your soul. I mean, some of you might have seen that movie, Modern Times, with Charlie Chaplin. And given all this, it's very strange that work is hardly ever discussed. No, when you think about it, most of the adult population spend the majority of their waking hours working. If you include the commuting hours, it's the vast majority of your life. If you're some unlucky guy stuck in one of those black townships in South Africa, you could be spending 6 hours commuting every day. Because the old apartheid government basically refused to give good road infrastructure to that part of the world, part of the country, and then they didn't build any public transport. So these people have to rely on these minibuses, which are called taxis in that country, run by the gangsters. And because they have to travel in long distance in the areas where there's no real road, it could take you 3 hours each way. Despite this, we don't really talk about work. As a result, a lot of people in many countries feel less happy today compared to, say, 20, 30 years ago, despite having much higher income. I mean, there are different reasons, but one of the important reasons is that we have completely ignored the changes that have happened to their work life. So they might be doing more stressful work. I mean, if you're working for one of the Amazon warehouses, they put the GPS monitor on you, and you are given a warning if you kind of stop for a chat with a colleague or whatever. Or maybe that your job security has fallen and you are terrified all the time. and you are stressed out. Yeah? Maybe you are spending far more time commuting in unpleasant public transport. Yeah? Yeah, so you feel less happy, but on paper you are earning 15% more, so you are supposed to be happier, yeah? But you are not. Yeah? So unless we take work seriously, we cannot really talk about our welfare and the building a good society. Yeah, and okay, let's. I think I have to skip this. Yeah, I was going to talk about how the book also emphasizes that economics is a political subject, not as a value, not a value-free science. But I think that I would rather have more time to discuss things with you than give lectures. So let me skip to the concluding part. This book is not just an explanation of economic theories and facts. It is also about the role of economics in public life. And in this regard, I have three sets of observations to make. The first is never trust an economist. And that includes me. I'm not excluding myself from that. You should all be willing to challenge professional economists. They do not have a monopoly over truth, even when it comes to economic matters, not to speak of everything. And it is entirely possible for people who are not professional economists to have sound judgments on economic issues. Sometimes their judgments may even be better than those of professional economists because they may be more rooted in reality and less narrowly focused. Yeah? Because, as they say, we don't live by bread alone. You have to balance economic issues with other things. And, economists have been trained only to look at certain things from certain perspective, and therefore, they might make a very unbalanced judgment. Yeah? I would actually go one step further and say that the willingness to challenge professional economists and indeed other experts is a foundation of democracy. No, because when you think about it, if all you have to do is to listen to the experts, why have elections? Yeah, there'll be economists to tell you what kind of monetary policy you will have, what kind of welfare policy you will have, but there'll be political scientists to tell you what kind of political repression that you can have or should have. Yeah? There'll be experts on international relations, whether you should invade Iraq or Afghanistan. Yeah? Yeah, so you don't need democracy. Yeah? So in a way, the ordinary people's willingness to challenge the professionals is a foundation of democracy. The second point I'd make is to follow this Latin proverb, which apparently is written on the walls of City Hall of the Dutch city of Gouda, which is famous for its cheese. Yeah? This is at audite et alteram partem. Sorry for my bad Latin pronunciation. This means listen even to the other side. And I would argue that this is the attitude you should have in debating economic issues. Because given the complexity of the world, and given the necessarily partial nature of all economic theories, you should be humble about the validity of your favorite theory and should keep an open mind about it. This is not to say that you shouldn't have an opinion. You should have your strong opinion, but in the ultimate instance, you have to accept that you could be wrong. Your theory is not perfect. It's based on particular ethical and political assumptions, and they may be wrong in some places and time. And finally, throughout the book, even while I constantly make reform proposals, I emphasize how difficult it is to change the economic reality. Sometimes the difficulty is due to the active attempts by those who benefit from the status quo to defend their positions, be that through bribing, lobbying, media propaganda, and even violence. But the status quo often gets defended even without some people actively trying to be evil. Because in capitalism, the $1, one vote rule of the market drastically constrains the ability of those with less money to refuse undesirable options given to them. So, Karl Marx put it very dramatically. He said, in capitalism, the choice that workers, the only choice that workers have is to work for someone for a wage, however miserable that wage is and however bad the working condition is, or to starve to death. So, in capitalism, people with less money have less options, and they have much lower ability to say no to things they wouldn't necessarily like. But it's also because people can be susceptible to beliefs that go against their own interests. This is sometimes known as false consciousness. The most interesting example of this came from, as far as I'm concerned, the people demonstrating against the so-called Obamacare in America. And some of these people had these placards, some of these pensioners had these placards saying, "Government hands off my Medicare program." Now, hang on, isn't Medicare program a government program, Yeah, so these people are basically manipulated by the Republican the media to believe that actually, this the Medicare program was the private sector program. Yeah, so they were actually demonstrating against what could help them. Anyway, so for all these reasons, the status quo is more rather than less likely to be defended, but acknowledging the difficulties involved in changing the economic status quo should not make us give up the fight to create a better economy. Yes, changes are difficult, but in the long run, when enough people fight for them, many impossible things happen. Just remember, 200 years ago, many respectable people thought abolishing slavery was an outrageous suggestion. 100 years ago, many women are put in jail for asking for vote. Only 50, 60 years ago, most of the founding fathers of developing nations of today were hunted down as terrorists by the British and the French. But all of these things have happened. So this is why I quote Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist, who said that we need pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will. We need to accept the reality, but we need to think about ways to change it. And finally, as Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it is done. So with that, I'll stop and invite you to ask questions and make comments. Thank you.
That was certainly witty and iconoclastic. So my first and the most obvious question is, when you walk in the room full of economists, do they embrace you and say, "Here, you are one of us"?
Just think about it. When you go to a biology department, you meet people doing research on living organisms with all kinds of different methods. So some of them do, anatomy, some of them study bone structure, like as if they are structural engineers. Some others do DNA analysis. Some do nasty experiments with rats. Some build mathematical models of animal behavior. And some go and sit in the jungle with the gorillas in the Rwanda and study their behavior. And they're all called biologists. Because these people know that living organisms are complex things, And you cannot understand them only at one level. Yeah? Yes, you have to look at their DNA, but you also need to know their anatomy. Yeah? Yes, you need to know their bone structure, but that doesn't tell you necessarily how they are going to behave. Yeah? And why can't economics be like that? You know? So I'm not, saying that people should only do one kind of research or another. I'm calling for a genuine pluralism, yeah? Not just live and let live, but try to agree that we need to study this complex thing called the economy with many different methods, and they are all equally valid. Yeah? No, because frankly, within the economics profession, there's these days this notion that the less related to the real world that you do, you are clever. Yeah? Yeah, so if you are clever, you will do mathematical modeling of something very, very abstract like the Turing machine or information cascade or whatever. And if someone is running around serving factory managers or going through archives of government documents, they think, frankly, there's something wrong with the guy. Because if he was any good, he would be sitting down and doing mathematical modeling. Why does he need to meet real-world people or read real documents? Yeah? I mean, the guy must be a retard by definition. Yeah? So I really hate that. But then I don't go on to say that you should not do mathematical modeling, because sometimes if you do it well, mathematical models can reveal things that you can never reveal through verbal presentation. Yeah? So let's truly have all the different flowers bloom and cross-fertilize. Eh?
Yeah, one more question before I throw the floor open for questions. When I was in Davos, the great thing about going to Davos is that you eavesdrop on very interesting conversations.
Yeah.
And I eavesdropped on a conversation between the then president of Harvard, Larry Summers, and the then president of Yale, Rick Levin. And Rick Levin was actually lamenting the fact that modern social scientists seem to be caught in various equations and things like that, and have very little understanding of the real world. And this is the university president talking to each other. And so as he was saying this, Larry replied to Rick Levin in his usual, way. He says, "Rick, you're not bringing up this dirty word called area studies, are you?" As you know, the word area studies became sort of a bad word in American social science, and that if you're really good, you study universal theories, you didn't go and study Afghanistan or Africa or Argentina or whatever it is, So that's, in a sense, in a larger problem in social science. So it's not just in economics only.
No, of course, yeah.
So anyway, questions from the floor. Please, come to the microphone. This is ice.
Oh, no, fine.
Please, introduce yourself and ask an iconoclastic question.
I'm simply a member of the public, a layperson, and I enjoyed your presentation and read some of your writings, Dr. Chang.
Oh, thank you.
I think this audience will be aware of the recent activities in the field of so-called happiness research. And I wonder if you have a sense of whether this is simply a kind of voodoo activity. How are they measuring something that's approximates reality? And do you think we can measure it as well as we measure blood pressure, for example?
What research again? I didn't hear that.
Happiness.
It's happiness research.
Yeah, no, actually, there is a whole section in this book about happiness research. So for my detailed comments, please refer to it when it comes.
Please buy a copy.
Is the commercial break. Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, I can understand why people have got into happiness research, because monetary income doesn't necessarily measure how satisfied people are. So that we try to measure monetary income to give this some objectivity, but then a lot of research has come out that at least for the richer countries, there's no correlation between the monetary income and happiness. So people try to measure this. Of course, the difficulty is that happiness is something that is impossible to measure. Einstein once famously said that not everything counts can be measured, and not everything that can be measured counts. Yeah? So there's a huge problem with this, and there are ways to kind of make it more plausible, but even when even numbers like GDP and unemployment rate is based on a lot of assumptions, these happiness numbers are based on huge range of assumptions, and you have to take it very carefully. Yeah? And also when you base this happiness research entirely on subjective judgment, you face this problem of what I earlier called false consciousness. Yeah? I mean, the most dramatic illustration of that is the movie The Matrix. Yeah? Yeah, so you think you are happy, not knowing that you are being used as a human battery. Yeah? But then are you really happy or not? Yeah? Because you think you are happy. And what does this guy Morpheus think when he rescues you to make you live in the miserable reality? Yeah? So, it's a very contentious area, and I mean, I'm not dismissing it, but it's something that you have to take with a lot more caution than when you look at income figures or things like that. Yeah?
So, as a quick follow-up question, according to these surveys, Singaporeans are unhappy. Why?
There are some reasons about that. Singapore has one of the longest working hours among the rich countries. Not as long as South Korea, but...
But the South Koreans are happier.
Yeah, there's the subjective element. So, for example, if you look at this survey-based happiness studies, the Philippines and Mexico consistently score higher when you introduce some more objective measures. Yeah? Yeah. So you could say that they have more false consciousness. Yeah, yeah, but once again, I mean, who are you to tell them that they should feel miserable? If they say they are happy, they are happy. Yeah? Also, when you reach a high level of income like Singapore, there's this problem of so-called positional goods. Yeah? This is basically a good whose kind of utility derives from the fact that other people cannot consume it. Yeah? So you might have more money than before, but other people have even more money. So that bottle of the 2,000 Bordeaux that you wanted to buy and couldn't because of lack of your income, but which now can be bought with your income, is beyond your reach because someone else has become even richer. Yeah? Yeah. So there's that problem as well. I discussed it in the book too. So yeah, I mean it's a tricky area, but yes, I mean you have to take this seriously. I mean, if people say they are unhappy, there is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. True. Now I'm glad the ladies are asking questions. So over here, and I'll come to you. Yes, please identify yourself and a question.
My name is Tara Kimbrell Cole. I'm a systems thinking consultant from Innovations. What do you think it'll take to break the cycle of myopia, if we can call it that we're in? What do you think may be some of the key dynamic shifting points?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think you put it very well. I mean, it's only been 6 years since we had the biggest financial crash in the living memory, and we are repeating the same. The US stock market today is 20% higher than it was in 2007, despite the fact that per capita income in the US is only 2% higher than at the time. And everyone agrees that 2007 stock market was in a bubble territory. Yeah? So what are we doing? I mean, repeating the same mistake again and again and again. Basically the point is that we haven't really reformed the incentive structure at all since the last crisis. Yeah? It's basically still the same game. And yes, I mean, the byword in the financial market is devil takes the hindmost. Yeah? So unless you basically change the structure of the financial game, they are still going to play the same game. I mean, never mind this financial bubble, because you are happy as far as you don't get hurt and you get out in time. Yeah? So unless you reform the financial system to make it less easy to create this bubble by, increasing the capital requirement of the banks and restricting the use of this hugely dangerous financial derivatives and so on. This thing is going to happen again and again. Unfortunately, we find it very difficult to learn lessons.
So another crisis is coming.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Over there.
Yeah, but the beauty of it is that you cannot predict the timing. So I cannot make money out of this. Yeah, because there are only two economists who made any money in stock market in history. It's David Ricardo and John Maynard Keynes. Yeah? All the others have performed very poorly.
Okay, lady over there, please. Yes.
Okay, hello. My name is Ha-Joon Chang. I'm exchange student from Korea, and then I am very glad to have a chance to take your lecture. So I have a question about the role of government, and because I'm studying public policy. You talked about the cross-fertilization, and then I think cross-fertilization is already being realized by government or policies because they adopt the policies that is based on the mixture of mixture version of various theories like Singapore.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think there must be a role that government can take to realize the idea of economics that you have. So, because they are actually dealing with the real problems, how to distribute the resources or something. So I'd like to listen to your opinion about the role of government in economics or policy.
That's a very good point, because unlike professional economists, government has to deliver. So. No, it's not just economists, academics.
You sound like the Singapore government.
Yeah, academics are uniquely immune to kind of paying for their failures. The German physicist Max Planck once famously said that science progresses one funeral at a time. Yeah? Because sometimes ideas have to die with people. Whereas government, business, they have to respond to reality. Yeah? But yes, in a way that actually there's a lot of pressure building up these days from the government, from international organizations, from business enterprises, that economics should be changed. In the UK, a lot of employers are voicing concerns. We are getting these people with economics degree who are very clever, very mathematically competent, but they have no idea about the real world. And we are spending a lot of time and resources retraining these people. Do something. Yes, so in that sense, there is nothing like reality that can modify the ideology. But unfortunately, these days, even many governments are very ideologically driven. Singapore is the exception par excellence. But so many governments in other parts of the world have ruined the economy, being driven by ideology. A lot of the former socialist economists that have experienced that twice. Yeah, initially they were driven by socialist ideology and ruined the economy, and then when they decided to ditch it, they were driven by this pure free market ideology, which ruined the economy yet again. A lot of Latin American countries that were very ideologically driven in the 1990s and ruined the economies. So yes, unfortunately, that we are in short supply of pragmatism even in the real world. But let's hope that reality forces the academics to change their position.
Good. Yeah, over here, please. Gentleman over here, and then gentleman over there. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dr. Chang. I'm a student from Temasek Junior College. In your lecture, you have mentioned that being open to different thoughts of economic theories is actually a democratic process. But the inconvenient fact is that democracy can sometimes be very inefficient. You need time and energy to evaluate which one is the best school of theory after all. Using your analogy, you have mentioned we want 100 flowers to bloom and to cross-fertilize. But standing from a very pragmatic point of view, I think that there must be a purpose to it. If at the end of the day our purpose is to select the best fruit that each flower, that the pair of flowers is going to bear, then how do we evaluate the correctness in this sense of different schools of thoughts?
No, that's a good point. Pragmatism without purpose is basically lack of the direction. So you need some ultimate purpose, but then the difficulty is that it's impossible to agree on what is the best fruit. Because I cannot take a sour fruit. My family loves it. So we always fight whether to buy this or that. So yes, that's the reality, and I think that we have to accept that, because if you say that this is the only fruit, and everyone has to like it, then you are suppressing the minority. So yes, I mean, democracy is inefficient. It can be quite dysfunctional, but in the end, I think that's Winston Churchill once famously said that democracy is the worst economic system, political system, except for all the others. So I still support democracy on that ground.
Thank you for your response. And follow-up, I have another question. In the biological world, you have this natural selection process. After generations of tests, and you will see the survival of the fittest. I want to ask you whether, in your opinion, you think there's something like a natural selection in the development of economic theories, that after some time, those theories that have proven to be irrelevant and inaccurate will be filtered out.
Yes, the trouble is...
Will your theory survive?
No, the trouble is that, the economic theories are not selected entirely for their intellectual merit. No, seriously, because it's so important in maintaining the status quo. It is heavily influenced by money and power. No, seriously, I mean, it's like the Catholic theology during the Middle Ages. I mean, it's so crucial for maintaining the status quo. I mean, the rich people have easy time if the poor people begin to believe that they are poor entirely because of their own fault. And then they shut up, as they do in America. So, there's a huge selection bias, if you like, in terms of whose interest it serves. So you have to recognize that economics is a very political argument. Economists will try to tell you that it's a value-free science. It is not. And that in that sense, when people say, but 95% of economists are neoclassical because it's, which must mean that it's superior, you have to take that political factor into account.
Okay. Now, as usual, we have lots of questions at the end. Let's take the three questions together, Ha-Joon, and you can take some notes. Okay, please, 1, 2, 3. Yes.
I am Ananta Nageshwaran, and my question is: if the 2008 crisis did not bring about humility and open minds in economists, what else would be needed to bring those two attributes into the profession? Thank you.
One crisis is not enough. Next question.
Hi, I'm Casey Chu, Chairman of Substation. You reminded us that the definitions that we use in everyday life, GDP, unemployment, all these have their severe limitations in terms of the assumptions that they carry, which is a great reminder because we always forget, like inflation, Singaporeans find that they can no longer afford a house, but that inflation is just still 1 or 2% for the last 20 years. How has this happened? So my question is, why is there not a certain agreement in the world of economics, just like the accountants? You have accounting standards, and accounting standards improve over time or they change over time. Why don't economists have the same thing, such that with the addition of 1 or 2 factors, it makes GDP more realistic, it measures the things that need to be measured, it makes inflation more representative?
Okay, next question.
Okay, hi, I'm Yongsen here. So I'm going to check with your, because the first thing first is that in econs we keep talking about efficiency, especially in free market economics. Then my point is efficiency the ultimate pursuit for government intervention? With that, I also want to ask is that, because we keep talking about efficiency, and in a way, from my university education, I haven't been talking about crisis at all. So how does econs add value to the, you mentioned about different school of thoughts, right? How does it add value to the discussion of crisis, explanation of crisis to the general public?
Okay,
Right.
okay, I just see one more question, the last one, quickly.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Laureen from, I'm studying chemistry at NUS, but anyway. Okay, my question is, what are your views regarding how economics is taught in universities? And following up, what do you think can be done to ensure that students are being adequately exposed to different schools of economic thought?
Okay, you have four tough questions.
Yes, well, yes, what else would it need for the real world to change economists? Yeah, probably another crisis might be helpful, but even then, don't forget, university professors have tenures. Huh? No, we need tenures to keep people intellectual independence. Yeah? But, the downside of tenure system is that...
I thought ending tenure at the Lee Kuan Yew School.
Sorry?
I thought we should stop tenure at the Lee Kuan Yew School.
Oh, no, I object to that, but, basically the problem is that there's nothing that only has benefits and no cost, yeah? So how do you get the balance right, yeah? But, real world changes do not happen in a mechanistic way, in 1929 we had the worst economic crisis ever since the beginning of capitalism. The output fell by 25-30% in many economies. Unemployment rose to 25-30% in many economies. Despite that, it was only in 1932, 33, 35 that the countries started reforming their economies. The New Deal was 1933, not 1930. Yeah? Okay, so that we are taking longer, but I wouldn't necessarily say that this crisis has been wasted. Yeah? Of course, a lot depends on what people demand. Yeah? Because at the time there was stronger popular pressure which made these reforms more possible, but I wouldn't necessarily say that this crisis has been entirely wasted. And yeah, it has at least weakened the intellectual authority of many free market believers. So let's hope something comes out of all this. Yes, inflation, a lot depends on whether you include housing prices or not. Yeah? So if you don't include the housing prices, it looks quite low. If you do, it can be high. There are inflation indexes reflecting changes in housing prices, but it's less often used for whatever good and bad reasons. Yes, so there are many measures that could be improved with addition of some simple things, but in the end, the economics is not going to be like accounting, because let's not kid ourselves that even accounting has certain political and ethical assumptions, but economics has a lot more. So we are not going to get there, but yes, we can certainly improve a lot of measurements. Efficiency, well, actually there are different definitions of efficiency. So, I cannot go into that, but you can define efficiency in many different ways, and that can imply very different policy directions. Yeah? So for one example, you can talk about efficiency today, but you can talk about efficiency in the long run. Yeah? So if you are talking about long run efficiency, it might be actually more efficient to, say, protect your infant industries like the United States in the 19th century or Japan and Korea in the 20th century did, to allow them some space to grow up and increase their productivity a lot later. If you are talking about just today's efficiency, you shouldn't do that. Yeah? And this is indeed what many people argued about the Japanese automobile industry in the 1950s. Yeah? You know, back in 1955, all the 12 Japanese automobile producers put together produced 70,000 cars. In that year, General Motors alone produced 3.5 million cars. Yeah? Yeah, so that if you see it from short-term efficiency point of view, it was totally wasteful for Japan to protect this rubbish car industry. Whereas if you apply this long-term efficiency notion, it did make sense, yeah, because today Japanese car industry is superior to the American one. Yeah? So that's one point. Another point is, yes, I mean, efficiency is only one of the considerations that we have to take into account. Yeah? And as I said earlier, we don't live by bread alone. I mean, these days everything is supposed to justify its existence in terms of economic efficiency. But even as an economist, I think that's wrong. Yeah, that's just wrong. Yeah, if you start to apply this logic to the limit, why do you even teach the kids the history of music or physical education in school? Yeah? These are all waste of time. Yeah? No, seriously, I mean, you need to teach them how to read and how to count. Actually, you don't even need to teach them how to count. Huh? Because now you have barcode machines, yeah? So all you have to do is this, yeah? Yeah, so as far as they can understand the language, you don't need to teach them anything else, yeah? But do you want to live in a world where people are treated like that and taught only to follow the instructions, yeah? Yeah, you want them to know about the world, geography, history, yeah? Music, yeah? Arts, yeah? So I just do not want to live in a world where everything is driven by efficiency. Yeah? And if some economist try to convince you of that, he's wrong. Yeah? Yeah, finally, teaching of economics in universities, yes, I mean, there's a serious problem. And, in the UK, in the US, in France, in Germany, in Brazil, and many other countries now, students are getting organized to demand reform of economics teaching. Yeah? The trouble is that not so much that, that there's too much math or whatever, but that the curriculum is designed on the assumption that every economics undergraduate wants to become a professional economist. No, they don't. Yeah? No, they want to work in a bank or in the government ministries or in consulting companies, and they are taught virtually nothing about the real world. So the students want that. And secondly, yes, I mean, they need to be exposed to different kinds of view. Yeah? It's one thing to say that there are these schools, and then they have these problems, and then I think this is the best. It's another not even to teach about other schools. Yeah? That's North Korea. Yeah? No, seriously, I mean, if you are so confident about your theory, why don't you teach all the other theories and show why yours is superior? So there are huge problems with economic education, and there are actually growing movement all over the world led by students, demanding that this has to be reformed. So let's see where it leads to. Yeah?
Well, Ha-Joon, the main reason why we organize these public lectures is to ensure that the Singapore public is given new windows to all different points of view, and I think clearly this lecture has been spectacularly successful in convincing us that not just one single way of looking at the world, but many different ways of looking at the world. And I'm sure after we do look at all the world in many different ways, we will all become happier. So thank you very much.
Thank you.